Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 5th podcast, or not the 7 o'clock news. Oh, I've just realised that that's wrong. It says not the 7 o'clock news. It should actually be not the 76 o'clock and then new. I've done that badly, haven't I? I just knocked it up very quickly. I knocked it up very, very quickly. Total fail. That would have been very cool. Not the 76 o'clock news. Yeah. I spent more time trying to make the font look like the original one from Not the 9 o'clock news. Botched the joke. I did. I botched the joke. Can you believe I botched the joke? Yes, of course you can believe it. Yeah, no. Play on the old... for those of you who are not British and old, it's a play on an old series called Not the 9 o'clock news. And that is my way of saying, let's not talk about Fallout 76 today. I know there was news. I know there's been news about it. I know there's always news about it. But let's talk about something different. Let's not be talking about Fallout 76. Pretty sure we can all get behind that, right? I think the first thing I want to talk about is the announcement that there is a new Half-Life game. Yes, indeed. Half-Life 3. Not confirmed, because it's not Half-Life 3. Because the numerical way we used to name games makes no sense anymore. Thank you for the resubs. So, it used to be you'd have like a movie, Superman 1, and then Superman 2, and then Superman 3, and so on. You know, it was pretty predictable. You knew the 4th Superman movie was going to be called Superman 4. And then we started having all these offshoots. And suddenly you had the 4th Fallout game wasn't Fallout 4, was actually Fallout New Vegas. And the 5th Fallout game became Fallout 4. Although if you want to really truly argue it, Fallout Tactics was the 3rd Fallout game, I suppose. And so on and so forth. This is not Half-Life 3. And in fact, it isn't Half-Life 3. It's not the follow-on. We are not getting a continuation. It is Half-Life Alyx, and I believe it's a sort of prequel to Half-Life 2. But of course, the major controversy is it's a VR-only game, and everyone's like, well, no, what? Don't make me buy VR. Why are you making a VR game? Why are you not making Half-Life 3? They're never going to make Half-Life 3, okay? They've got no reason to make Half-Life 3. Okay, I'm gonna qualify that a little. They currently have no reason to make Half-Life 3, all right? I know what people are thinking, but it's a guaranteed win. It'll be a guaranteed money maker. Yes, and it might even be one of the most, money-making games of the year it came out. But this is Valve. The amount of money they make on one money-making game is negligible compared to the amount of money they make on everything else. Okay? Everything else. The only way I see Half-Life 3 getting announced is if they need Half-Life 3 to be announced. Like, they need a distraction or something. Something goes wrong, Steam starts going downhill, Gabe Newell gets caught in a 3-way orgy with a goat and a panda or something, and they want to change the news cycle, and they'll announce Half-Life 3 so everyone stops talking about, the panda. That is the only way I see Half-Life 3 ever being announced. Okay? I mean, people are sort of suggesting, well, Steam exclusives. They don't need a Steam exclusive. In fact, at the moment, I suspect a Steam exclusive would almost be counterproductive. I think it's in the current climate. So they've got no need. I mean, I know Epic are trying to take on Steam, etc., but they're not. Here's what Steam's not going to do. They're not going to fight Epic by releasing one game. Right, that's mine. That's my opinion. I don't think Half-Life 3 is coming out. So why is Half-Life Alyx coming out then? I mean, why bother with a VR game which will, let's face it, probably make a lot less money? And some people think part of the reason is they want to sell more VR headsets. Maybe. But honestly, do you know what I think Half-Life Alyx is? I think it's a showcase for a new engine. I think Half-Life Alyx is to VR what Half-Life 2 was to gaming of that era. Because let's face it, Half-Life 2, if you'd played Half-Life 1 and then you played Half-Life 2 straight afterwards, one of the things about Half-Life 2 I remember thinking was it really feels like it's trying to show off the physics engine at the time. You know, with its gravity gun and everything. And it was. Half-Life 2 was a showcase for the Source engine. And I'm going to bet that Half-Life Alyx will be the showcase for a new VR engine. And I'm going to guess what they've done is they've made a VR engine from ground up that really emphasizes things like those finger controls on the index. And it's not that they will have one Steam exclusive VR title in Half-Life Alyx. I think they'll then sell this engine to other people, but it'll all be built up around the idea of the touch, what are they called? The touch controllers, the index controllers. What are they called? Whatever they are, right? Those finger controllers. I'm gonna bet that Half-Life Alyx has got loads of stuff that requires that, right? Which, yes, in of itself would probably make people think about upgrading to that headset. But if they can give it to other VR makers, an engine like that, and get them to make games for it, they'll be ahead of the curve. So I think it's partly so they can sell the rights to the engine and make money that way. They'll make money from people licensing their engine, but also it will push people at an early stage to buy their headsets. But it will then also probably push the competition to have to adopt the same sort of technology, finger technology. And whatever their engine allows them to do on the Valve Index, for example, all the competition will have to follow suit, so that they'll all have to adopt it. And then Valve becomes the industry leader. I mean, right now, the Vive is probably ahead of the Oculus, I don't know, in sales, but none of them are really driving the technology, as it were. None of them are really ahead of the curve. In fact, if anything, the Oculus was probably ahead with its controller. The touch controller seemed a lot better than the Vive ones. And you can see the new Valve controllers seem to have taken quite a lot of input from that. But maybe they're just trying to become, the industry leader in that, not just with the hardware, but with the engine as well, the same way as they did with the Source engine. So that's what I think. I think this is just, they've been developing this engine all the while they've been developing the Index, and they needed a game for it. And Half-Life is one of those games that will just get eyes on it. It may get people who weren't thinking of VR into VR, and it will really, really, the way the second Half-Life game did, showcase the engine. So, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Hoping, anyway. And I tell you what I'm really hoping for, though. Portal 3 VR. Although, I have no idea how you can do that without a vomit bag. So, yeah. You're very suspect of Valve's ability to make games at this point. Yeah, me too, to be honest with you. Right, I've given up waiting for Left 4 Dead 3, Half-Life 3's, it's mythware. The only other thought I had was maybe they're putting a team together to do Half-Life Alyx, partly to get the engine going, but partly to get a bunch of story writers and people together and give them a bit of experience making a Half-Life game to iron the kinks out in the team, and then that team will have the creative expertise to then work on Half-Life 3, because they're probably a bit rusty as a game developer, is old Valve. So maybe that was it, but I don't think so. I just don't see any business reason for Half-Life 3 to be required, and seeing as I've said, it's almost a nuclear get-out-of-jail-free card, they can sort of afford to use it when they need to use it. Because let's face it, if and when they ever announce Half-Life 3, it is going to wipe out the news cycle for 6 months. I mean, they could announce it and say we're going to release it in 5 months, and that will be all YouTube sees for 5 months. Top 10 things I think will be in Half-Life 3. Top 7 things I want in Half-Life 3. Top 12.5 things I'm sick of hearing in top 10 videos for Half-Life 3. That's what's going to happen if Half-Life 3 ever bloody gets announced, so. Oh, Jean-Clee says maybe Half-Life 3 is an insurance. Yeah, maybe he's going to hold it hostage. So if we ever develop technology to extend life, he can go, right, I need it, or I'm not releasing Half-Life 3, and we'll all club together and buy it for him. So, 60% sure a script was leaked for Half-Life 3. It could be. But anyway, so that is my current thinking on the Half-Life news. But I think of it as good news, and yes, assuming I can play it on the Rift, or assuming they've started selling the Valve Index in Norway, which is a big assumption, I will probably play this game. If it's one of these games where, oh, it'll work on the Index, but it's not going to be as good as it will be on the Index because of the controllers, I may wait until I can bloody well buy an Index. You can play it on any VR set. Yeah, okay. Well, then I'm really worried. I'm really wondering whether there will be things added to it. You know, that will allow the individual finger manipulation and that sort of thing. Because if so, if there are other things you can do, if it's somehow got some extra things, if you're using the Index controllers, I'm going to wait. However, yes, I'm going to be playing Half-Life Alyx. I played all the previous Half-Life games except for, I think it was episode 2. I don't know whether I actually played episode 2. So, yeah, Half-Life 1 was absolutely brilliant. Half-Life 2 was great. Although, I will tell you, Half-Life 2 just did not grab me the way Half-Life 1 did. Technologically, it was better. And it was probably better in every single way. I think Half-Life 1 grabbed me because it was, in some ways, the first game I played that was like that. I was used to playing FPS games that were just in-your-face FPS games, you know. Start off, fight. Maybe a starting tutorial, although in those days there were no tutorials. Just, you got a manual with the game. You read it, figured out the keys, jumped in. But there were also role-playing games that sometimes had story, but very often, again, the story would be given to you in a 3-page pamphlet in the box set. Half-Life, I remember how cool it felt travelling in on that rail train thing into work and seeing all the time. It was very movie-like. I remember sitting there thinking, this is kind of cool, because I was just thinking it was going to be a shooter. This is kind of cool, and it's one of these shooters that really drew you in with story and character as well. So I'm not saying it was the first of its kind, but it is the one that made me start to see shooters in a different light. Because I guess Half-Life wasn't a shooter, that's why. But I had very compartmentalized views of different games back in those days. So, but then back in those days, games generally did tend to be more formulaic. Role-playing games were role-playing games. Shooters tended to be shooters. Merch! Somebody's bought merch! Shotgun tea, Foose snowball tea, and a Steve mug. Thank you very much. We really do need to look into figuring out how to get more details about that. Yeah, well, I'm gonna try and Google it. There's got to be some way of linking Streamlabs and Teespring to the point where we can actually have it. You know, I actually think it would be nice if it could trigger which item it was, and then I could tell it to trigger an image like of the maybe not the merchandise, but the artwork involved. Just System Shock was first. System Shock really wasn't a shooter though. System Shock was an RPG. System Shock was a shooter. But I thought of System Shock as an RPG. Half-Life didn't come across as an RPG because it had no character build system. There was no, you know, it was It felt like a pure shooter in a way because you just went in, you had a character, you started picking up weapons, and you started killing things and solving puzzles, and wandering around doing stuff the way you would in a shooter. But it was far more. It felt far more story driven. So I remember playing. Was it Blue Shift? And then there was the Army one. I think they were based upon Half-Life, or were they based upon Half-Life 2? I can't remember. There was all these expansion packs for it, and I loved them. I really did. But they were shooters. They were shooters, but they took it. They gave it more depth. It's like things like Fear. Fear was a shooter, but it was a horror shooter. And the games, I think, started to expand during that period. And Half-Life is one of those I remembered at the time that began to make me aware that games didn't just have to be bog basic shooters where the real aim was to run around and murder as many people as possible without really caring about the story. I mean, I played the original, like, Call of Duty or Medal of Honor or whatever. There was a few of them, and they really were. I didn't care about the story in the slightest. I cared about running around and shooting people. Whereas with Half-Life, I really did. I got pulled in, which was unusual because that's the sort of thing that normally got me pulled in was like an RPG. So yeah. Opposing Force, that was it. Was it number 1 or was it number 2? Now, Half-Life 2's intro was pretty good as well. You were on an actual train. But by then I'd already seen it, you know what I mean? Leonard Steele's Christmas mug. Excellent. I loved Fear. I played all of the Fear games up. I don't know if I played the last one. I will have to check that. I may have. Is that the one where you end up cooperating with the protagonist from the previous ones? But I remember I played the expansion packs as well. Loved Fear. So, but yeah. So Half-Life has got a special place in my heart because of that. So I will be playing Half-Life Alyx. Who was that? Resub Silverthorn. Thank you very much. Oh, Google Stadia. Yeah, Google Stadia got a bit of flack, didn't it? I've still not tried it. I know I said I might try it, but I've not really had time. I've actually been a little under the weather this week. Nothing major, your typical man flu sort of thing, a minor cold that's just kind of annoying me. I thought I felt good enough to go to the gym today, so I wandered out and I walked all the way down to the gym and then turned around and walked back and went shopping instead. I mean, I didn't feel terrible, but by the time I got down there, I felt so run down. I just wanted to sit down and then doze. I was like, oh my God. So I've not really had a chance to try that many new things, and with Outer Worlds still tiring my eyes out, I really want to sort of limit how much I do other things anyway, just so that I can keep playing Outer Worlds. Because Outer Worlds is still, even on the lowest settings, is still causing my eyes to get tired after about an hour. So, yeah. But yeah, but Google Stadia was released and a lot of people tried it and some people said it was okay and people playing on the PC said this is useless. Because, do you remember those claims of it'll have very little lag? And you see these videos of people pressing the space button and then the character jumps like half a second later. It's like, yeah, that's not going to work. I think it's going to be a while before the games that require fast response are going to be playable, at least on PC, for PC gamers. I think it's going to be a while. And I actually think that they're probably going to have to change not just the technology, but the approach they have with this if they want it to really be successful. I actually can see a lot of the games that are going to be made for cloud gaming in the future will actually have a front and a back end, where the back end will be online on the servers and may do an awful lot of the work for you. But any of the stuff that needs really, really fast response will be done at your end. So it'll offload it a little bit. So for example, perhaps the server end, the Stadia end, or whatever it's going to be called, could model what it is you could possibly see the world, so to speak, without rendering it, send that to your computer, and your computer just applies the textures and perhaps moves the model a few degrees depending on how you've moved. It would still need a fairly good graphics card, but perhaps it wouldn't need as strong a CPU. Maybe the graphics card wouldn't need to do as much, and and that way you would have a fast response for what you're doing, and it would show you what you were doing, but it wouldn't mind too much if, for example, the AI was a tenth of a second behind, because if the AI takes a tenth of a second to decide something based upon what you do, that's not actually that unreasonable. So I think for this sort of thing to work, they're going to have to rethink the way they program games and specifically make them to have a front end that is specific for the device you're on. It could be lightweight, but it will still need to do, or more lightweight than the main game. It might not need to load all the data, but it will still need to be able to handle certain bits of data, and it will need to have all of the textures and things loaded up in advance, and be able to sort of construct it on the fly very, very quickly. So it'll be more like 70% of the work is done at the server end and 30% is done at your end. And if you're on a good computer, it'll be obviously a lot better to look at than if you're on your mobile phone. But I think that's going to be something that will need to happen for it to really work in the short term. Long term, if they want to offload more of the work to the servers, I think they're going to have to make the technology better of the internet. To be honest, I think they're going to need to be able to get it so that people all over the world can get 1/60th of a second lag to the server. And that's a long ways off. So, yeah. Yeah, the new Obsidian I.P., it looks like a survival game where you play a small person. Now, as I said, I didn't really get many details, but either you've been shrunk and you're trying to survive as a shrunk person, or it's like The Borrowers. It's probably not necessarily a game I'm going to love. I'm not huge into these survival type games, but it looked cutesy. It looked interesting, and it is sort of interesting in that it's Obsidian making it, because Obsidian are more known for RPGs as far as I know. So, let's see how they wander into that particular genre. I don't want to talk about it too much because I really don't know much about it, and there's always someone in the video on demand afterwards who gets really offended that I didn't deep dive it before discussing it. It's just, it looked cute. I'll keep my eye on it. Yeah, I mean, The Forest is a survival game. Yeah, it's true. I will play survival games with people like Che, and I'm not saying I won't play this survival game either. This might be a great game for me and Che to play. What I mean is, I don't really know much about survival games. I've played a few. I generally play them a little and then stop. And, most people who play survival games have probably got several hundred hours in something like Ark or Rust, way more hours in Minecraft as a survivor or something like that. Me, most of my survival gaming you guys have seen on my live channel. It's not the sort of thing that I'm going to be following like a hawk. Not like if the next Elder Scrolls game was announced or something like that, or a new Stalker game, a new Metro game, the sort of games that I'm really passionate about. That's what I mean, when I say I'm not really a survival game player. I know I've played probably 200 episodes of The Forest, which is technically a survival game, but it's not a survival game at this point. It's let's be as silly as humanly possible and try to bring civilization to an island that's not an island. And yes, you could probably argue that that's a survival game. I don't know. Maybe I am. Maybe I am a survival game player then. Maybe I should rethink. But, BT Ransu says, it's a survival game for the locals. Yes. The local cannibals are all getting together saying, do you think we can survive these two? It's a building game and a cannibal farmer game. Absolutely. Did I never release my final thoughts on Metro Exodus? Did I not? I recorded them. I remember recording them. Did I never put it together and release it as a video? Okay. No, I liked Metro Exodus. I did. It was a little different. It was a little different to Metro Last Light and Metro 2033. It felt very different for a variety of reasons. And in some ways, I preferred the first two. I think I preferred the atmosphere on the first two. But I liked Metro Exodus, and it did feel like it was the natural progression of the story as well. So the fact that a lot of it was on the surface, you know, that was, I think, as to be expected. To be expected. But there was a little side of me, just little side of me, preferred that, you know, roaming around in the metro, I think. So, but yeah, no, I did like it. I mean, I liked Metro Exodus. Don't get me wrong, I did. It's just the first two, special place in my heart. Special place in my heart. In fact, I'll tell you, probably 2033 is the most special place in my heart. That game was tough on Ranger Hardcore. I've heard it's not as tough on the Redux, but it was tough. It was tough. But yes, probably my favourite. Okay, let's deal with a few questions at once then. We should have a section for have you heard about? Have you seen? Have I seen the gameplay trailers for Bloodlines 2? I saw one very early release trailer and I've not seen a lot since. I generally try to avoid, well, not try to avoid, I generally just avoid a lot of the gameplay footage release of this, that and the other because I don't have time. Or for example, right now, when I'm playing a game like The Outer Worlds that does tire my eyes and it makes me feel a little mushy in the head if I play it for an hour and a half. I have to stop and take quite a big break. Looking at other gameplay footage is not the best way to recover from that. So what I'll tend to do is listen to someone talk about something. So I won't look at the screen. I'll listen to them while I wander around, make food, and then I'll come back and I'll carry on recording The Outer Worlds or something like that. So I've not seen a lot of gameplay footage, but if the question is, am I still excited for Bloodlines 2? The answer is yes. I'm assuming that there's nothing up with the gameplay footage because although I've not seen it, I would assume I would have heard something if it's absolutely horrific. So, Von Bear saying there's also a new S.T.A.L.K.E.R game coming out. I actually think I've got some emails about this. I may even have a code for it. Or something along those lines. I don't think I've responded back because you've got to remember I do get hundreds of emails on a daily basis. But this is one of the ones I've sort of kept in my go back and read that more carefully and do something about it list. Unfortunately, that list is kind of large. I've got several things I need to go back and do. But yeah, I would be interested in a new S.T.A.L.K.E.R game, definitely. I mean, I still, there's a little side of me thinking of going back and playing Call of Pripyat. Don't know whether I'd do a Let's Play of it. Because, you know, it didn't go down too well with Clear Sky as a Let's Play. So, and I want to be a little more careful of the games I choose now because, I've got so many games and I want to make sure I'm uploading the ones that the viewers are really going to engage with on a positive, in a positive way. So, yeah, will I play Call of Pripyat? Probably. Will I Let's Play it? Don't know. Do not know. I'm going to play it modded. I might make, if I did decide to play it, what I would do is make a quick video asking for mod suggestions, but it would not be with the Misery mod. It would not be the Misery mod, I don't think, because I remember talking about this with some S.T.A.L.K.E.R experts, and a lot of people were like, oh, you should play with the Misery mod, you should play with the Misery mod, but I do remember some people who were seriously hardcore S.T.A.L.K.E.R fans saying, no, don't do your first playthrough on Misery mod, because it will brutally and utterly murder you, and it won't make a good Let's Play. Is sort of what I was getting the feeling of. It was like they said, we love the Misery mod, but that's because we know the game off by heart, back to front, and don't mind creeping around for hours on end to get, you know, whatever needs to be done. And you're probably not going to want to do a Let's Play. Because, of course, playing it on Master difficulty was tough enough. So probably I'd be playing it on just Master difficulty. So I just don't want to call the fire brigade for my comment section again. There is a side of me, not which is weird. The S.T.A.L.K.E.R Shadow of Chernobyl crowd were fine. There was the odd person who was deeply offended that some utter noob like me dared play their game, especially playing it on Master difficulty with the heads-up display elements turned off, because I used a modded heads-up display to turn off half the elements, so I didn't get enemy radar, and there were some people who were mortally offended that I dared play their favourite game on the toughest difficulty on my first blind run with heads-up display elements turned off, and thus obviously made mistakes they would never dream of making. But they were drowned out by the vast majority of the people who genuinely enjoyed watching a newcomer try the game on the toughest difficulty and just get totally absorbed into it. Because I did. I got really into Shadow of Chernobyl. With Clear Skies, I got frustrated a bit by several aspects of it, and I would say the problem with Clear Skies is it's the sort of game where you almost have to have read up a little bit about it before you play it. At least that's the feeling I got from the comments, because the comments were all along the lines of, well, you should have done this and you should have done that and you had to do this and you had to do that. And I'm like, well, how was I supposed to know that? And they're all like, well, you should have read it online. Now, of course, I didn't need to know any of those things for Shadow of Chernobyl. So my argument is, if Shadow of Chernobyl could allow me to go in totally blind on the toughest difficulty and figure everything out as I go, why couldn't Clear Skies? Because one of the problems with Clear Skies apparently was I decided not to join a faction. I went neutral, which I did in Shadow of Chernobyl as well, and it worked in Shadow of Chernobyl. It didn't work in Clear Skies. I didn't get all the good gear that I needed to get the end. I also didn't understand how useful the anomalies were, the artifacts, sorry, and so I didn't take as many risks as people who'd read up on it would have, because I didn't realise how essential they were going to be at the end. The difficulty at the end of that game ramped up to the point of stupidity. So I was playing the game and I was doing okay, but people were like, you know, oh, well, it's your own fault. You shouldn't have gone to that point, the point of no return, before you had this weapon and this armour and these number of artifacts. And I'm like, well, how was I supposed to know that? And the answer invariably came back as, well, you could have read it online, or if you played it on an easier difficulty, you'd know. And it was all like that. So I felt like the two games had a different, well, they required a different approach. And, you know, Shadow of Chernobyl worked well with my approach. Go in blind, figure it all out. And I did. I figured it all out. In spite of the initial comments, well, you're never going to get through this. You're never going to get through this. There wasn't that many of them, actually. I think, as I said, generally speaking, the Shadow of Chernobyl comments were pretty good. There was one or two, you know, but whereas Clear Skies, I felt like, even there was a start fighting area as well, and it was ridiculously tough. There was tons of fighting very early on, whereas I think with Shadow of Chernobyl, I felt more like I was stalking around slowly, and there was less pitched battle. So yeah. Have I ever thought of Sniper Elite? I own 2 of them, but again, time, lack of. Stalker Misery, that's one for you. Well, I've been told to avoid Misery. I have been told avoid Misery because, well, not avoid it, but don't play it on your first blind playthrough. Because whilst it's a great mod, it's a superb mod, I'm told, it is a mod that's sort of, in its own way, would turn the game a little like Clear Skies. You kind of need to go in with a lot of preparation, whereas, you know, I will be going in blind. So that's the thing. I think if I do Pripyat, I'll do it not vanilla, but what I think of as vanilla plus plus. Vanilla with mods that reduce the heads-up display elements and improve the graphics. So a good sequel means the first game is enough preparation for the second. Yeah, I think you should be able to play any game without any prior knowledge on the toughest difficulty and still be able to do it. I can't stand games. Well, it's not that I can't stand games. I do not approve of difficulty levels that require foreknowledge, to be honest. I mean, it depends. If it's an arcade game, if it's something like Payday 2, that type of game, yeah, sure. Crank on the silly, stupid difficulties where you need to know X, Y, and Z. But for games with stories and things, I find those sort of difficulty levels to be a little... If they're going to do that, what they should do is do what some games do, lock those off until you've completed it once. Just literally say, no, this is designed for people who know the game inside out. This isn't difficulty because we've made the AI tougher. This is difficulty where we've made it so that if you don't have prior knowledge, you will die. If it requires prior knowledge to survive, to me, it's either an arcade game or it's failed, if that makes sense. Okay, that was sort of a mixture of gaming and YouTube channel news more than anything. That was definitely more channel news than anything. So we've obviously moved on from actual gaming news. We've skipped modding, which is fine. I don't have much to talk about this time. I will talk about the monetization issue on YouTube. I did release the video that got demonetized for extreme profanity, you know, profanity that was hateful or derogatory. I did upload that video unaltered. I say unaltered. I added a frame at the end, an extra frame. That's all that you need for YouTube to recognize it as a different video. So I added a frame and I uploaded it. Nothing else was changed. Nothing. So, in theory, it should have been rejected for the same reason. And it wasn't. Green. Totally green. No problem whatsoever. Manual review. Which tends to make me think it was just a mistake. It was just a mistake. And it's kind of annoying that there's no way to appeal it. Because I should have been able to appeal that. But you can't appeal things that have been manually reviewed. And for some reason, they're auto-manually reviewing every single video I make. And I mean every single video now. All of my videos have been manually reviewed according to them. And they do clearly state manual review involves a human person. I'm not saying I disbelieve them. I'm saying I have not made my mind up as to whether to believe them or not yet. The video, for those of you that don't know, I had a video that, it was an Outer Worlds video, and I uploaded it, and I flagged it for only two things that could be potentially an issue, and that was violence. It contained violence from a video game, and that's supposed to be okay for adverts as long as it's not overly graphical. If it was a 20-minute clip of every brutality move in Mortal Kombat 11, it probably would be unsuitable. But if it's a bit of shooting in a game, it's acceptable. And I flagged it for mild profanity. Now, I don't even know if that video had profanity because I can never remember whether or not the NPCs swear. But I do know they do swear in the Outer Worlds, so I flag every video as contains mild profanity. I was reliably told there was at least one instance of the word ass, but I'm pretty sure that classifies as minor profanity by YouTube's description. So when it came back, it was flagged not just as strong profanity, which is the next level up, strong profanity, which massively reduces your ad revenue. It came back as the worst one. strong profanity used in a hateful or derogatory way. We're talking the worst kind of profanity, which is insane. I didn't swear, and I don't think I even read any notes that had swearing, but I didn't verbalize any swear words. And as I said, I think there was like one instance of the word ass. I could not believe it. I really couldn't. There had to be some problem. Several theories came up that it was a part about, as Jean-Claude said, about the French. I can say with a fair degree of certainty it's nothing to do with that. And the reason I can say with a fair degree of certainty it's nothing to do with the fact... But there's a little section where Vicar Max goes, oh, French. Why did it have to be in French? And I responded with, hey, I'm all for having to go at the French, but come on, you're getting a bit ridiculous now, right? And some people are saying, well, maybe that was seen as hate speech. I mean, that in itself would be ridiculous, right? But the reason I'm fairly sure it's nothing to do with the French thing is there's another section in the thing you fill out for them. It's a massive. I don't know. Maybe I can even show you. It's not like one question. There is a bunch of questions. Let me just. Right. So what happens is you get this thing, view submission. I can view it. I cannot change it now. Once I've changed the video, right? And you have to fill in answers to all of these questions. And the one that was catching me was inappropriate language. I'd flagged it as light profanity. It was saying strong profanity used in a hateful or derogatory way. We thought it was about the French. The reason I'm pretty sure it's nothing to do with the French is there's a section for that. Hateful content likely to offend a marginalised individual or group. Now, I know the French are not marginalised, but this is like references to a marginalised group that are made in a non-hurtful manner, content that may be offensive to a marginalised group, and hate or discrimination towards a protected group. Now, you could argue the French don't classify under there, but I'd say they classify far more under there than the comment about the French, because at no point did I use profanity or did Vicar Max use profanity regarding the French. So it couldn't be under profanity. It's much more likely to be under hateful content. So that's why I just didn't think it was the French in the end. I just did not think it was going to be about the French. But then I uploaded it and it went through the review process without a hitch. So I made the other one private, and I think I'm even going to delete it because I don't even like having videos on my channel that are flagged like that. I don't know if it affects the algorithm. I don't know if they see the number. This channel has 4 videos that have hateful content. I don't even like the idea of that. So if there is any other YouTuber out there who's having this issue, you may want to just try re-uploading the video for a laugh and see if it gets the same thing. It is really annoying that they don't specify what was the point that triggered it. And there's a lot of people saying they don't like to do that because then people try to find ways around the rules. Surely that means what they try to do is actually obey the rules. Finding a way to get around profanity rules would involve removing the profanity, right? It's like, oh, well, if you know what you're not allowed to say, you might make videos where you don't say it. And isn't that kind of the point? I mean, wouldn't that be good? I mean, what do they think? Well, you might realise that saying the C word 4 times, one after another, will get you banned. But if you say it backwards, we won't notice it. Fine. So I'll be saying tnook, tnook, tnook. Oh, brilliant. Well, I've got around the profanity filter by not saying anything profane. I mean, it's kind of annoying why they can't point you at a timestamp and say, this is the point where we decided enough was enough. You know. So I can say, oh, really? I'm not allowed to say bad things about the French. Okay, I shall stop doing it. I mean, that's how you get round that rule, right? Well, you don't get round it. You obey it. You can't get around that rule. Well, I suppose I could go, well, oh, no, not those people who live south of the English Channel and wear silly berets. Damn. And get away with it somehow, right? Oh, that was anti-French. That was anti-French. You said you liked Monty Python. Oh, anti-French. You're trying to get round our rules. No, as long as I don't say something about the French that's hateful, if I learn because of that timestamp, surely the videos are better. But nope, won't give you a timestamp. Will not give you a timestamp, and you can't even challenge it. Which is ridiculous when every single video gets automatically manually reviewed. Automatically manually reviewed. Some of them are going to get caught by mistake. And I should be able to go, excuse me, you made a mistake here. Oh, you did make a mistake here. So yeah. So anyway, that's that one done. I re-uploaded it and the problem's gone. So at least I know what to do next time. It's silly. And I was thinking to myself, would this classify as trying to get round the rules? But I figure it can't, right? There's no way. If I submit a video twice because I don't believe it's hateful profanity and they manually review it, and they've said they've manually reviewed it, and they've said, no, this is fine, then that's not me getting round the rules. Because I did worry about it very, very briefly. Because I think it's a glitch. That's my thoughts. It was a glitch. Is there any Richard merchandise in the works? I'm not 100% sure what Richard merchandise would work. Richard had a great story, but he really lacked any defining I don't know, memes, sayings. It's weird when I think about it. You know, Steve had "Have a Bill." Where's Jazago? Jack has his shotgun and he has whiskey. You know, he has the hat and he has the glasses. Richard had a unique look, I suppose, but that was it. And he had a bow. But again, I sort of feel with Richard, what defined Richard was the idea of a book, not the idea of a bow. I mean, really, the most iconic image I've got of Richard is one I commissioned. I'm not even sure if I've got it. It's not the one that you see in this shot with him with the bow. I somehow feel that the Vault Boy style doesn't work as well with Richard because Richard just looks too young and happy. I think, like, you can look almost smugly cheerful as Leonard or as Steve or even as Jack to some degree, but Richard just it's just the wrong style for him. Even though I think that the author did a good job, I think Vault Boy Richard it's not. And I do have an image. I've got an image of him with a book, reading a book. Vault Boy style. My God, for some odd reason, my Threadripper is really slow when I surf through the through the file browser. I think it's because I turned off the searching because I thought that might speed up some of my problems I was having with Sony Vegas. Turned out it was something completely different. All right, Richard Vault Boy. So yeah, you could always sell spoons. I mean, that's the thing. With Richard, there are the odd moment, like the spoon story, but actually throughout the playthrough, the only consistent thing with Richard would be the bow and the book. There's no humorous meme. And that's weird when you think about it. That is weird. Even Frank had Bumblebee. And Frank wasn't a really well-developed character. I never have very well-developed characters on, you know, blind playthroughs usually. Even Timothy had his robot army of doom. Monty has a mustache, and that alone is a thing. And Leonard. I mean, Leonard has a lot of things, but let's face it now, it's become the sweet roll. That is the symbol of Leonard, and it's humorous, and it's there, and then there's the naked pirate moment. And there's just something about all of those characters that have got moments that translate well to single images that would be funny. Richard doesn't have a single image, a single moment that is funny, in my opinion. And that's weird. But that's how it is. All right, I found an image. Add a new source. Richard book. Richard was the best story. I'm really proud of the Richard story and even the Richard character, but at the same time, he was a lot more work than, say, Leonard. I mean, Leonard is a lot of work as a story, but as a character, he's so easy. He's so much fun. He really is, because he's so simple in his desires. It's so easy to slip into his mentality, which probably shows a major character flaw on my part. He's so self-absorbed and has such simplistic... I'm not seeing who that was. Who was that? Is that... Great. Thank you for the resub. He's got such, you know, style, money, power, self-aggrandizement, and it's just so... It's so easy to slip into him as a caricature. Richard was a bit more complicated. I think that's the problem. Richard was a complicated character, and therefore it was actually somewhat harder to meme him, to mock him. Maybe I just do bad guys better. It's probably, as I've said, a bad. There you go. It's a bit large. Let's shrink him down. And put him off at the side there. There you go. So, yeah, so there's a Richard with a book. And I actually think that's more rich. He's even got, like, the face, the slightly sardonic, like, what are you going to say to irritate me face? And a book. And I think in some ways that is more Richard. And that is, in a way, that was kind of the entire Richard story. Starts as a librarian, ends as a librarian. So yeah. Yeah. Have I ever thought about selling merch with the thumbnail images from the videos? Maybe a compilation of the chapter titles. What, like, just one t-shirt for each episode? I would somewhat worry that the people who always want to own one of everything would go broke rather rapidly. Oh, dear. Oh, God, please no, said Quadico. So, yeah. Algorithms lead to FTAC investigations. Those investigations will lead to interpretations which lead to 42,000 fines. I have no idea what you're saying now. It's hard enough organising merch as it is, says Quadico. So that would be a no, guys. We've already got a lot of merchandise on the go. We've had some ideas for doing something different on the merchandise, but we'll have to look into it after Christmas. We've even thought about doing some sort of competition for any artists who actually watch the my series, who and maybe, you know, get some ideas, or maybe throw out a moment and say, send your stuff and we'll vote on it or something. So we like all of these bloody hell, go for what? This is not a secret. You know, something like this. We've got some ideas of ways to make it interesting. Maybe moments like that would give us a bit more fluidity, or not fluidity, a bit more range when it comes to, say, characters like Richard. Because maybe there are people out there who've got a moment in their head, an image. Maybe it's just Richard fighting Alduin and they've got an image of it and they can draw it, and that would actually somehow capture it. I think sometimes with artists, it can be better to just say to them, show me what you've got, and let them do what comes to their mind, rather than to describe an exact situation to them. If they know the subject matter, especially if they follow you. If you ever watch me and Che play and you've ever seen Sarnacone does artwork on the fly while we're playing, and it's brilliant, but it's spur of the moment stuff. And I sometimes feel that like that might be an interesting way of doing it, because I'm going to guess you guys on occasion see things I don't. Half of the stuff that ends up on t-shirts, I don't think to myself when I say them, oh, that's going on a t-shirt. You guys watch the videos and say, I want that on a t-shirt. The one with the girl who said I'm cold, so I said, so jump in the fire, little girl. That was like a total throwaway comment that I forgot about 2 seconds later, because it's the sort of thing Leonard would say and forget 2 seconds later. I didn't even register I'd said it, which probably is a bad thing. Now that I've said that out loud, that's probably a bad sign. But yeah, it's like, boom. But you guys, you pick up on it. Same was true of the shotgun comment from Jack. I don't need a personality, I've got a shotgun. It's very, very rare I say something and think, oh, they'll want that on a t-shirt, right? And it does happen. I'll say something now and I'm beginning to recognize it more, but half the stuff, I don't see it until you point it out to me. So maybe there is some art out there. Yeah. Naked pirate t-shirt. Oh. Anyway, on that note, we're at the 1 hour mark, ladies and gentlemen. And we've made it. We did it. We did it. We've done an entire podcast without having to talk about the game that should never be mentioned, but probably will at some point. We did it. So, to avoid any chance that we might accidentally fall into that subject, I'm going to call it right here, right now. Thank you for joining me this week. I'll be back next week for more, not the 76 o'clock news or whatever we're going to stick with. We're just going to change the name each and every time. Hope you can join me for that. Thank you for tonight, and I will see you guys next time.